What do you call that? Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. All right. All right, it looks like we actually do have a quorum today, which I'm told it does not really matter that much since we don't have any action items. But regardless, we can make it feel all official by calling us to order here today as the MPO Policy Board. And I don't think we are even nearing a Waco City Council quorum or other entity quorum. So I think that's the only one we need to call in. Has the meeting been posted? Yes. All right. We provide an opportunity. Do we have any registered speakers at this time?
Do we have any registered speaker?
No. Okay. If you would like to address the MPO Policy Board on any agenda item, please complete a speaker's registration card with MPO staff. Speakers will be allotted one presentation at the beginning of the agenda for each agenda item the speaker wishes to address. Please note that any action item will have a separate public hearing later in the agenda. Speakers have the option of addressing the board at either time, but you'll only be allowed one opportunity to address the board per agenda item. For items not on today's agenda, there's a separate hearing of visitors at the end of the meeting. We don't have any registered speakers, so we're going to move on to approval of the minutes. Agenda item 3, and consider the approval of the minutes of the October 20th, 2022 MPO Policy Board meeting. A copy of the minutes was provided in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as submitted? Hearing none, they are approved as presented. And that brings us to the presentation and discussion regarding the Texas State Infrastructure Bank, the SIB, Transportation Loan Program. And we have Dallas Teston here from TxDOT joining us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you all for y'all's time today, letting me come here and speak a little bit. As you mentioned, my name is Dallas Teston. I'm the Texas State Infrastructure Bank Program Lead. I work at TxDOT out of Austin. Today, I'm going to give you all a little background of the program, kind of what we offer and what the process is to obtain a loan from us. So I'll first start off with a little bit of background. So the Texas SIB, it acts as a revolving fund. So all the repayments that we get go back into the fund to grow it and keep it going over time. So the fund's been around since the late 90s. And in that time, we've been able to keep it going and continue doing loans. So the money that comes out of it, if you borrow from us, is considered non-federal dollars. So we did originally start, and we still are in partnership with the FHWA, but the money that we're spending is considered non-federal because it's come from repayments from non-federal sources over the years. So using the SIB itself won't federalize your project. So a couple of stats. So we've done 146 loans to date. That brings anywhere from 10,000 to 42 million. We don't have a loan minimum to borrow from us. We do have some guardrails of loan maximums, the lowest one being about $50 million. Our median loan amount is about 1 million. So about 1 to 5 million is where most communities borrow from us. We've issued 728 million in loans, and we've used that to leverage and help get done about $8 billion in projects across the state.
For those of us new to the SIB, these are loans available to governmental entities, not individuals, if we were looking for credit or some assistance. Right?
Correct. So
strictly for infrastructure projects for your municipality or county.
Right. So so who typically borrows from us? That's a great question. So the loans we've given out, about 75% of them have gone to cities and counties, such as yourself. We've done about 12% to various water supply entities, so water supply corporations, MUD, SUDs, and those are all for basically utility relocations on TxDOT projects. And then some communities have used their kind of 4B sales tax revenue and their economic development corporations to borrow from us. And we've worked with a few RMAs around the state as well. So to kind of give a visual of where we've lent around the state, the blue circles are active loans, the orange squares are paid off ones. As you can see, there's a lot of activity up and down the I-35 corridor from San Antonio up to Dallas. We've done a couple in the area. So the city of Robinson did one in the early 2000s. Our most recent one was a utility relocation loan with the city of Whitney in the Waco district. But as you can see, we've kind of spread out all over the state. We do work statewide. So jumping into eligibility, I'll actually start on the right-hand side, the box with the eligible uses. So the funds can be used for any costs incidental to the construction or reconstruction of a roadway. So anything involved in that, so the actual labor and materials, engineering that goes into that, design, things like that. A big one right now that I know with inflation, rising costs, rising labor costs, so you can include contingency in your loan amount, and we're encouraging most of our borrowers to do that because we basically will reconcile it at the end once the project closes out. Anything you don't use, you'll have to return and to pay down the loan. If you end up needing more, we'll have to go through the whole process again. So we're encouraging borrowers, especially in the kind of climate that we're in right now, to add on contingency to their loan amount. Other typical uses: right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation, if it's in conjunction with an eligible project, local matches. So if there's a grant or something where you have a local match that you have to meet, you can't borrow from us as long as it's for an eligible project. Joint bids. So if you're doing a utility relocation and you're joint bidding it with TxDOT and just contributing the funds, you can borrow from us for that. And then any financial and legal fees that you incur over the course of the application. Jumping over to the right-hand side. So as I mentioned earlier, we are still in partnership with FHWA. So any projects have to be eligible under federal highway programs. So if it's a roadway, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the Texas state highway system, but it has to be classified above a rural minor collector. So it has to be federal aid eligible. And then any programs that are eligible under Title 23. So I know there's a lot of new programs that just came out with IAJA. Any of those programs, if there's any fund contribution, those are eligible under the SID as well. So any kind of different programs, I think Safe Routes to School, transportation alternative programs are one that kind of comes to the top of my head because we worked with those before. But any of those are eligible for borrowing under the SID as well. So to kind of just give a high level snapshot, so this is over the Waco area. I think Beverly Hills is included as well. The orange roadways in this are overlap with on-system roadways. Every other roadway in this, it would be eligible for SID financing as an off-system roadway as well. But I show that just to kind of give an example that there is some opportunity to use it, especially in more urban areas. So why borrow from us? What does our program offer? So for one, I kind of tout that's a low cost of borrowing. So we don't charge any fees. We don't charge anything for loan handling. The bulk of our loans are done through a direct loan agreement that's authorized in statute. So we can be the sole purchaser of a bond or a certificate of obligation if that's what your community wishes to do. But most of ours are done just through a direct loan agreement with TxDOT. The loans are callable at any time, so you can make prepayments at any time without penalty on them. We also offer principal or interest deferments if you haven't budgeted for that first year's payment, or if you have debt expiring in the next couple of years, or just other reasons that you would want to defer out the first payment. We offer that as well. Kind of a big one right now in a rising rate environment. We set the rate at the time you apply. So I'll show you in a second, but there's an entire process that does take a few months. We set the rate when you apply. So if rates continue to go up from that time, your rate will be locked in and it's a fixed rate throughout the life of the loan. So to kind of give a snapshot of where rates are right now. So this is for an A-rated borrower as of last week. We use MMD, so the Municipal Market Index, to set our rates. So it's set based on the credit rating of the borrower and how long you want to borrow. So as you can kind of see with an A-rated borrower, it's a sliding scale. The farther you go out, it ticks up a little bit. Conversely, if this was based on a 10-year, if it was from AAA to unrated, it would tick up as well. If you're a smaller community, we don't require a credit rating to borrow. You can borrow from us without one. Obviously, there's a little bit of benefit. It'll be a little bit cheaper if you have one. So typically the process, I say takes about 4 to 6 months. So we encourage communities to kind of start early in their process. So what will happen, you'll need to pass a resolution authorizing your application. You'll submit that to us with the completed application itself. We do some internal reviews within TxDOT just to kind of, we're not subject matter experts, so we send it to our various environmental design division. We'll have the district look it over as well. One thing I do note, if there is a required environmental component, so if there are state funds or federal funds on the project and you're required to do environmental, we do have to have that cleared before our commission will approve it. All of our loans do have to go through the Transportation Commission. If it's for an off-system roadway or over 10 million, we do have to do 2 readings as well on that. So after commission approval, TxDOT will draft, if we're doing the direct loan agreement, TxDOT will draft the agreement, provide it to you and your advisors for review. We'll address any comments. After we have a good final draft done, it'll need to go back to your governing body for approval for execution. After that, we can typically close the loan and get things dispersed within a couple of weeks after we get that. So with that, just some key takeaways. So the SIB, one thing I want y'all to remember about it, if you forget all that detail that I went through, is that the SIB is it's a low-cost financing tool for transportation projects that TxDOT offers. So we definitely want you to think about it as a tool in your toolbox. If you need to get projects done, you're looking at different funding sources for them. Definitely, we can try to help you out. Another thing, on or off system roads can be eligible. For it, we set the rate at the time of application. So as rates are going up, that could be a benefit to your community by applying early. Our typical process is about 4 to 6 months. And then all of our loans have to go through our commission. And lastly, that is my contact information. On our website, we have a copy of our application. We have some one-page flyers that you can always use or have your staff review or anything like that. And I'll mention we're definitely available if you're interested in learning more about the program. We can talk to different people in your community or on your staff. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. I'll also be hanging around, so if it's something you just want to talk about offline or along the conversation, I'll be available as well.
Are most of the
Do the projects have to be designed in accordance with TxDOT requirements and reviewed by TxDOT?
Yes. So they have to, so I'm not a design expert. My understanding, they have to meet AASHTO standards. And that is something within our rules. So if it's a TxDOT project, obviously TxDOT will be involved. If TxDOT has no other involvement, we typically require the design plan to be submitted and reviewed.
Are most of the entities that successfully apply under, let's say, 200,000 population in their cities or in their counties, or is it a wide range? Do you see larger metros with this, or does this typically serve smaller municipalities?
I would say mostly smaller. It's a small to medium-sized communities. I don't think, no, we haven't worked with like city of Austin or Dallas or Houston. We've worked with a lot of suburban communities surrounding them. So I think typically our loans are mostly to smaller to mid-sized communities.
Any other questions or comments?
No, so if a local community got a SID loan that was attached to a project that TxDOT's trying to fund through our normal categorical funding, does that count as local contributions to the project?
Yes. So it's
non-federal money.
Correct. It's non-federal local dollars, and that's how I think it's cap 3 whenever we look at it. But yeah, it's considered non-federal local dollars because it's going through the locals and then they're paying back those funds.
Right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate being here.
Thank you for your time.
You said you'll stick around in case we have questions afterwards. Thanks so much.
I'll be around.
Next up, we are going to, no action is planned today on this. I think we're looking more for January as an action item. But we're looking at approval of resolution 2022-15, creation of a local fund to meet local match requirements for grant recipients, which we've discussed a few times before, but pass it over to Mukesh to lead us in that.
Yes, so we have talked about this, I think, the last two meetings, and at this meeting, we decided that we should probably prepare a draft of the resolution, how it needs to be, and also have a thorough discussion before we bring it up as an action item for the January meeting. And so just to recap, the idea is to create a local fund, which is going to be financed by the member entities. And in a moment, I'll go into the distribution of it. But this local fund then we can go ahead from the MPO's perspective and raise some other funds as well if we need to complement it. Most important motivation behind this local fund is really for us to remain grant ready. Over the next 5 years, we are expecting significant amount of grants that are going to be available within the metropolitan area, and it is really important that we are ready to take this opportunity to the highest extent possible, because this is an opportunity that I certainly do not think is going to happen to us, at least in any near future. So with this infrastructure bill and also Inflation Reduction Act, we do have significant amount of possibility for using it. Almost every federal grant application requires a 20% match. Typically from the MPO perspective, one of the nice things, and I may have mentioned this before, but Paul has been very instrumental and helpful in this, that when we started applying for a lot of these, the current process was a bit cumbersome, but Paul helps to smooth it out very comfortably so that we could submit it. And so the way it's going to work out is that if we succeed in some of these projects that we have, application that we have submitted, we will be expected to show that we have the 20% match available to us before we negotiate the terms of the contract with the Federal Highway Administration. And at that point in time, which I expect to occur sometime between February and April, we need to have this local match prepared. And along with that, what it also does is that this kind of local fund also allows us to pursue other types of grants that are not necessarily part of the infrastructure bill. And so even grant proposals like the RAISE grant, or which earlier you may have heard of that as a build grant, that is also on our radar that we would like to apply for a significant sum for that as well in the next round of so can you go next? So here's an example of how this might work. So the first major grant we submitted was the Safe Street for All planning grant. And in that we put up the expected application amount of 700,000 with 560,000 as the federal share and 140,000 as a local match. And for that particular grant, we're expecting that about half of that will be in kind, which will essentially be the time of you and your staff that will be involved with. And the remainder is going to be from the member jurisdiction. So this local fund will basically cover most of it. Go to the next. And so in this particular case, this is how it actually breaks down. And we started thinking about it largely in this context. And in a moment, I'll talk a little more about how some of the other municipalities throughout Texas and outside are handling these situations. So this is an example with which we thought that given we have 20 voting members and they're small cities and the TxDOT, which is not eligible to participate in this local fund, local fund. And so this is the rough distribution that we came up with 50,000 for city of Waco, 26,000 at McLennan County, and 24,000 for all other cities. Now, these numbers are not completely set, and that's the point I wanted to bring up for you to consider, so that at the next resolution, I would like to bring up some concrete numbers based on your direction today. Next. So this was our initial cut at it, and this is the table we have been using. And we also had a handout that I had that was included in your packet. And this is based on population. When we did the calculation, it comes out to be about 38 cents per person. And translated to that, the numbers look like you can see the population-based contribution. And it does not have to be exactly 4,000 or exactly 6,250. In fact, for this consideration, our recommendation really is going to be that we consider 5,000 from all the cities that are 5,000 and above. For city of Waco, it will still be at 50,000, and then for the county, it would be 20,000. But this is sort of the calculation of how we came up with some of these numbers.
In that far right column, there's population-based contribution in the kind of the intermediate column, but then the far right is policy board-based contribution. Is
Yes,
that
that's
right?
one
Like
of
if
60.
okay. So if we're looking at board membership of policy board member entities who can contribute, that's what that would look like there.
Yes. So the discussion item for us today, some of the items that we do need to discuss, and again, this is really open for any question or any thoughts so that we can incorporate it and make it significantly robust for the next meeting. So the first is that we think that the distribution of the fund, how the allocation distribution is going to be, we should consider it every 10 years based on decennial census, for instance. And so that's one idea. So for this year, we can set it at 5,000, 20,000 for the county and 50,000 for the city of Waco, but we can revise it every 10 years. If you think it needs to be revised more frequently at 5 years, certainly let's talk about it. In terms of purpose, I think that it'll be useful for us to be clear that this local fund is going to be used mainly as a local match for external grants, most of which will probably be federal grants. And also, I would like you to consider allowing the MPO staff to use part of the funds for public outreach and such, which are not covered with our PL dollars. There are a few other items also, which are PL planning funds, which funds our operation does not cover, are things like certificate maintenance. So for instance, if we have a staff who is PE or AICP, those are typically ineligible expenses under planning funds. Until recently, City of Waco has been covering those expenses, but as we are moving forward, it is important that the MPO covers that out of its own budget. Also, in terms of administration and control, how we administer this grant, it is important for us to consider. And what we are suggesting is that we either present it as in form of a detailed budget every October for the policy board to vote on, or we could even do it in April. That would also be applicable or just as useful. And along with that, there is something that I wanted to add, that any policy board member ought to be able to ask for the current information about the status of the fund at any point in time, and we will provide that answer as quickly. Even in fact, we will have that ready at every meeting if anyone has any question. And the last item related to that is that all the budget items on which you vote should probably have a 2/3 of the present members available in order for it to pass. So these are all the discussion items. So we just want to know if there is any thought, how would you like this to be changed so that we can write the resolution accordingly. We have a draft resolution that we wrote up, which is part of your packet. And so we are ready to move with just a little bit of your direction so that we can present it as an action item in January.
Where is the fund going to reside?
It will reside with the finance division within City of Waco as the fiscal agent.
Okay.
And we had let me give a little bit more background on that. So we did have this discussion about how does it get managed so far. So because City of Waco manages a few other federally funded entities as well. And so the accounting division in City of Waco, they already have these accounting systems set up so that it can be kept entirely separately. And the way it would end up playing out, for instance, is, so let's suppose we've become successful at getting the safety action grant, and we have to show them that we have the $70,000 as the cash donation or cash match for the grant. And so the City of Waco can take care of that, showing that this money is available, and they have already done that. So that's where it will reside, and we will have full accounting of it on a monthly basis.
Completely makes sense, being that the City of Waco currently serves fiscal agent. next question that I've got is, if there is no grant for a particular period of time, the monies can remain in that fund and be built upon in future years for future projects.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And following on that, you talked about coming at budget items in October, or April. I would imagine if there needed to be an adjustment up or even down, if maybe there's been a couple years with no grants built, you could theoretically come and recommend a lower amount.
Yes. Yes. Right now, tentatively, we're setting the 100,000 a year as sort of the target. In Texas, we did some research on how other MPOs are doing. The closest example we have is Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi creates a similar local fund in which members and member entities contribute to it, except TxDOT, again, for the same reason as ours. But a large number of MPOs, especially the ones that reside under the COGs, in those cases, the COG, in fact, allocates certain amount of membership dues to the member entities, which are then used as, from the MPO's point of view, as a local match for federal grants or any other purposes. And so that's typically the case. In our case, since we're not part of any COG, it is important for us to handle it at our own level. It's more in line with what the Corpus Christi MPO does.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
So at the next January meeting, action item will actually, so we plan to, so as we put out in the handout, that we'll put it at $5,000 per year annual contribution from cities that are between 5,000 and above, and $50,000 from the city of Waco, and $20,000 from McLennan County. That will also cover the small cities.
Okay, well, I guess we will see that as an agenda action item in January. We'll go ahead and move to our update and discussion on the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. So Dr. Kumar.
So I don't have, there has not been any new information. We were expecting at 15th of November, we were expecting new guidelines from Federal Highway Administration, but I have not seen any. And so I was hoping to brief you up on the new guidelines coming from Federal Highway Administration. It's not there, therefore I do not have anything new. Only thing I wanted to add was Claire McDonald from Ford dealership. They received a grant to put DC fast charging station. She was there at our last TAC meeting and gave us a very in-depth information on what does it actually take to put up a DC fast charging station. So our initial estimate, just to give you one example, our initial estimate was under the NEVI plan that is already approved that DC fast charging stations will cost about $50,000. But she explained to us that now it all depends on where are you putting it and who is financing it. Ford actually has decided that if they are going to be affiliated with Ford, they have to have a completely different wattage requirement and the ampere requirement. And so in her case, it actually ended up costing well over $100,000. Which is very different from the $50,000 estimation. And so we do have, so we have started putting together a very knowledgeable group of people who will help us with the next round of funding as it comes about. But just to recap, in case there are questions for any of you in your respective cities, that right now in the first round, there are two major DC fast charging stations that are already funded. One is at a Ford dealership and the other is at the road, the gas station up north on Road Ranger.
Is it Road Ranger?
Road Ranger, thank you. Yes, yes.
We got the plans on that.
Yes. So Road Ranger is they have 6 fast charging stations that is already funded. Once these 2 locations are completed, after that, the next set of items are going to be, every county in the state of Texas is allocated at the minimum one DC. That's the next priority along with MPO. So within the MPO's area, we are expecting about $1.8 million total of funding for the charging stations, but not all of that is going to be fast charging stations. A lot of them are probably going to be level 2 chargers at much smaller scales. So that's where we are. I do not have any new information to share, but we feel pretty good about our preparation for when it comes out. We will be ready with not only consideration of applications, but processing it and then sending it out further for funding. Any question? And if you have a question that I can't answer, I'm more than happy. We have good contact at both Federal Higher Administration and TxDOT to get us answered fairly quickly.
All right, then we will move on to our update discussion of the carbon reduction program.
So just a reminder that we approved the resolution at the last meeting, and we adopted the project evaluation process. The only update I have one update and one question. The update is that we have a writer who writes for Strongstown and is a very good editor. She helped us edit some of the portions of the evaluation criteria. And one of the important things she pointed out were the questions that do not automatically mean anything. They need to be more specific. So just to give you an example, we had a lot of debate about the question, but one of the evaluation criteria was, does the project increase racial and socioeconomic equity? And she pointed out that that doesn't mean anything to anybody. And so we really needed to be a little more specific about what exactly are we looking at. Otherwise, our TAC members will be evaluating it. They will have no good basis for evaluation. And so we changed it to increases quality of life across racial and socioeconomic categories, which sort of makes it a little more significant so that we can think about it more clearly. Similarly, we provide examples in all the categories where we say any other way that this project reduces carbon. Well, we needed to give some examples, so we put some examples. Those are the only changes we made, and I think our instrument is ready. And the question I have for you is when might be a good time for us to open it for call for proposal? We think with your instruction, we can open it up toward the end of January or early February, but I am going to wait for you to clearly indicate when would you like us to open it. So if you say, if you have a preference for opening it up in February, we'll present this as an action item in January. If you say that March would be a good time, we'll present it as an action item in February, in which you will simply take action on opening the call for proposal. And also you are going to assign the evaluation and recommendation role to the technical advisory committee. Any question or comment, suggestion, when might be a good time to open it up?
So you're ready to go, you just need direction.
Yes. January is the late, we do have to put it on the website, and we are still struggling a little bit because the website is new and there are portions of the website that need to be fully updated. And that's why we think that anytime, so by end of January will be, we can put it up on the website and we can start taking application.
So that would be the earliest.
That would be the earliest, yes.
What is your recommendation?
February. So that way we can
put it up in January for February.
Yes. So, but we would like to keep it open for at least 3 months because this is the first time we would be doing something like this. So we want to keep it open at least for 3 months. So if we open it, let's say 1st of February, we'd like it to stay open till the end of April. And that way we have plenty of time. If any of the municipality have questions, then we can answer them and have a robust process. It is a relatively small amount of money, but I think it also gives us much better ability to be creative because it does not have those many restrictions on it.
Then I'll say January.
Okay. So we'll bring it up as an action item for January.
You don't have.
The next item is the updated discussion from the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee. I do not think there's an update to give on that, unless anyone here just feels led by the Spirit, who happens to serve on the Technical Advisory Committee. Amy, do you want to volunteer? No.
I don't think we are, yeah. You're seeing what, most of what we saw and talked about at the last meeting.
Okay. All right, and with that, we will get into the most exciting presentation of our meetings, and that is the updates from TxDOT regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metropolitan. Take it away. Thanks so much for being here.
Sir. All right, we'll start with Waco Drive. This is a project, we're getting somewhat close to wrapping up the flat work. We're going to be working with the city and Encore very closely to get power cut over to our new signals. That work should start up late this year, run into the early part of next. As those signals are cut over, we'll complete the curb ramps and some of the intersection sidewalk work. With the total project being wrapped up probably spring of next year is what we're looking at right now. 18th Street, again, this is a project that is basically wrapped up at this point. A little bit of cleanup and finish work on it, but it's basically done. State Highway 31 overpass at 939 intersection. The bulk of the work right now is working on the new westbound main lane bridge and the embankment there over 939. Along with that, there's intersection work ongoing under the new bridges, and then the widening work down 939 to the south. That project is still on schedule for completion of next summer. Spring Valley widening. We recently switched traffic on the north end of that project to the west side of the roadway on temporary pavement. Contractor started removing old pavement. We're going to be installing drainage structures and starting the permanent construction on the east side of the roadway. That's primarily between Sun Valley and Old Temple Road right now. Likely early part of next year, we'll make a similar traffic shift from Old Temple down towards Hewitt Drive to do the same thing. Traffic should stay in that configuration for roughly 9 months to a year. Total project completion is fall of 2024 still at this time. State Highway 6 Mall-to-Mall project, starting at the Bagby intersection, continuing to work on the west to east turnaround. We anticipate getting that opened up early part of next year. To the Beverly Railroad crossing. We expect to have both frontage road bridges open by the end of this calendar year, along with reestablishing that connection to the Beverly intersection. We're actually going to be making a traffic shift tonight around the industrial area to Imperial, getting traffic moved onto new pavement there, while we continue to work on the new frontage road bridges at the Imperial crossing. Still on target for a completion date of end of next calendar year.
Clayton, can you remind us, does Mall have incentives built in?
It does, yes, and it's a little smaller than the interstate. The first major milestone is getting the 4 frontage road bridges built, getting main lanes moved out to them, and then there's an overall project completion incentive on it.
This should be tracking.
They do. Interstate, again, milestones B1 and B2, which are southbound mainland, northbound mainland construction. Those have been completed, again, ahead of schedule. Substantial completion. You can see we're roughly 100 days out there and should have no issues meeting that schedule.
Appreciate the work y'all did on the ground break, or the ribbon cutting. I thought that was a nice event and well run.
Thanks to everyone who attended. All right, and I apologize. These photos are a little behind. But now at the 11th, 12th Street intersection, since this photo was taken, all roadway work is basically complete to this point. Intersection has been striped. The one remaining piece there is getting signals turned on. Encore's current schedule right now is looking more like the first, second week of this December to get those powered up. But as soon as they're ready, it's just a matter of flipping the switch basically there and getting that intersection open up. Again, here's just the west half of the intersection showing that tie-in. Again, roadway work's been completed, and this is striped as it sits today. Moving up around the 4th, 5th Street intersection, looking to the north. Again, the majority of the roadway work is done in this area with the exception of 5th Street. We'll see a photo of it here in just a second. Here's actually the east side, 4th and 5th. Again, sidewalk's been completed in this area. Those that were there last week know the landscaping's been completed for the most part under the bridge at this point, with just some cleanup work going on there as well. Same area. Here's the area I was referring to earlier, Fifth Street. There was a little bit of drainage work to be completed in that area. It's currently ongoing. Likely early part of December, we should have the north half of the Fifth Street connection, the roadway work being completed at that point. And hopefully by Christmas time, you see concrete pavement on the ground there, Fifth Street completely opened up. Looking north at the Brazos River, again, you can see the completed frontage road and main lanes in the area. University Parks, again, this is an intersection that's been opened up since this photo was taken. Signals are up and running here, traffic is in its final configuration. Again, just showing the western connection. Again, this has been completed since the photo was taken. Main lanes, looking north from MLK. Looking towards the stadium. Again, really the only remaining work in this area is sidewalk, riprap, some aesthetics. Looking back to the south of the Brazos River, again, completed frontage roads and main lanes.
I have a question, is there going to be a sidewalk underneath the interstate?
We'll reestablish the connection that was there, yes, sir.
Because that's the shuttle bus drops off on the west side of the freeway. Yeah, and you walk under, there's no sidewalk there.
Right, part of it was removed for equipment access to build the new bridges overhead. We're wrapping up some of the retaining wall work there now, and then the sidewalk connection that existed prior to the project will be reestablished.
Is that,
I guess, was it just a timing issue with it? I mean, we're gonna miss miss the whole season.
yeah, won't be ready by TCU.
As far as schedule goes, March would be the contractual end date, so now it's not a schedule.
So are you talking about, Clayton, the one that's on the river under the bridge or under University Parks?
I'm talking about the one under University Park.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I'm talking about at the river.
Okay.
At University Parks, the sidewalk connection is in there.
Walk on, when the bus drops you, the shuttle bus drops you off.
I think.
You walk,
Okay.
you walk on the,
I think you're talking about the MLK
yeah,
intersection.
MLK. I'm sorry.
There will- yes,
Yeah, I'm sorry, MLK.
yes, that's part of the flat work that's ongoing there.
Uh-huh.
Again, probably December timeframe, it'll be wrapped up there.
I was just gonna give a thumbs down on that whole timing. I mean, they should have, somebody should have known. That's where the bus dropped off.
And all that was coordinated with Baylor.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm just voicing a complaint.
That's fine.
I know that part of the pavilion construction is going to keep that side of the rivers, what I'll call like the Riverwalk sidewalk, probably cut off for a long time.
Correct.
What about the other, like, would that be the north?
The
or the
north
east
side in front of Buzzer Billy's.
Yeah.
That's where I was at. That will be reconnected.
Do you have a sense of when that side will be open again?
I would think by the end of this calendar year, you'll see that connection reestablished.
Okay. And then, what did you say? I'm sorry, I know you did say it, but 11th and 12th, when do you expect that to be? Because it looks like a lot of the work is
The
done.
roadway work's done, it's striped. The biggest thing there is getting power to the signals.
Oh, okay.
Since those have never existed, we'd like to have those signals up and running before we open anything there. Encore is on site, working on getting all of our service connections done. It's looking like the second week of December, they expect to have the entire project ready for power. So,
Okay. And then once that's ready for power, it
It's
should
just a
pretty much
matter of-
just be activated.
correct.
Okay.
I have a question about pedestrian crossings and sidewalks that's overarching. So I might want to wait until you're done with this, but I just want to make sure.
It's
Okay.
fine, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Meg Wallace and I'm part of the bike pedestrian working group, and I'm also representing a group called Mobilize Waco that's paying attention to these projects as far as accessibility. So question one would be, where you are establishing pedestrian crossing lights, will they be, they have the audio?
They'll have audible signals.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the other question is, there's times when these things are done with the best of intentions and with the expertise, but there's something that's not working. We had one situation where one of those audio signals was pointed at the 9-degree angle wrong. potentially sending a blind neighbor out into the traffic, you know, because it was backwards. So I'm just curious, if people did try these new sidewalks and crossings and they noticed problems, what is the best timing on trying to address them? Would it be a good idea to work with Waco Walks and other, you know, pedestrian groups to try some of these things out and give input before everything's wound up, or does it?
So
What makes sense?
this particular project, because of the scope and scale of work, it'll go through a full TDLR inspection. So we'll actually have a group out of Austin come in and walk the project looking for those exact types of
Okay.
defects.
Is it possible for accessibility advocates, sub-advocates to participate in that process?
That I would have to look into.
Okay, that would be great, and I can give you my information.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, okay, so I'll talk to you after, thank you.
Again, looking at the completed main lanes frontage roads, this is from the Business 77 intersection looking north to Bellmead Drive. This is Business 77. Again, you can see the new configuration of that east-west connection there. The majority of this work has been completed since the photo was taken. Again, this is one of the areas we're waiting for power to get the signals up and running. Same area looking back to the south towards Forest Street and completed main lanes and frontage roads. Looking to the west at Business 77. Moving up to US 84. Again, this is another intersection and final configuration. Signals up and operational here. The primary work ongoing is some punch list and flat work, and then some landscape to be installed. Looking back to the south, you can see the braided ramp, completed frontage roads and main lanes in the area. This is the west side of 84, again showing that completed pavement. Barron Circle looking to the east. Again, you can see the Hogan and Wheeler connection that has actually been completed and reopened since the photo was taken, and this intersection is in final configuration. West side of the same intersection, again, that work's all been completed. And then looking up to the north at the north end of the project. Okay. Questions?
What are y'all gonna do with that Business 77 bridge?
So ultimately, that bridge will end up coming out. We're starting some schematic work for a future project in Potts Interchange there.
Just kind of curious about it. That's the only eyesore left.
It's getting started.
Any other questions for Clayton? Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate all the good work.
So,
They just small update.
so I'll just give you a quick update. He may not know all that because I just haven't told him. But we did have a quick meeting with TxDOT planning personnel. And if you remember the Business 77 corridor study that we all did, so the section from I-35 over to the 77, that area, if you remember, there were roundabouts and that work. So they are proceeding with that. They're starting schematics that he was referring to on that side, and then they will get to the other side. There's going to be some more discussion, but they're basically proceeding with what the policy board had advised them to do.
Gotcha.
We have a consultant that we're currently negotiating a contract with to do the schematic work at Potts Interchange to review that whole thing. The bridge, the intermediate bridge, that's not gonna be open. Got some other issues with that bridge and they're too expensive to fix. So we may come in and take that bridge out before the entire Potts Interchange is put in its final configuration, which is years away yet, but that other bridge will make them in there and just take that out.
That thing been there a long time.
Well, to be honest with you, we've got some historical issues that we have to work through before we can go ahead and remove it. As soon as we get that clear, we'll probably take that bridge out.
But Victor has said that he would come and give an update when, about that project.
Yeah.
So we can schedule that
And then
sometime.
there'll be public outreach from that schematic design to consult that public outreach meetings that anybody can attend to. Have input into that whole change.
Thanks.
Anything else on this item before we move to our work group update from the MPO Bicycle and Pedestrian Work Group? And Meg, are you here to present on that?
Yeah, there were no particular decisions made. We received a presentation from Tom Balk of the city of Waco about the Trails Master Plan. And they're working on goals to, in the short term, well, they've closed the loop, I guess, on walkability for around the connected river walk, but they'd like to have a continuous group loop around the river and, around the lake as a future goal, and some other exciting projects to try to connect the river walk to the Waco Dam Trail and the Mary Avenue corridor to the Cotton Belt Trail and things like that. So there's some pretty extensive plans kind of going off into the future to really improve the trail system. And I think that's the main thing. We just reviewed other things, did our reports and things like that, so.
Thank you so much.
If I can add something, we normally try to have a bike pedestrian work group meeting in a park, but it got really cold and last minute we started scampering for a place where we could actually meet. And turned out almost every place we called were closed. And so Mr. Bell came to our rescue and got us his conference training room so that we could actually have a meeting. So thank you for that. The only other update I have is, connected and automated vehicle work group, which was very active at the last MTP cycle. We have started trying to figure out how do we get them started again. And we have tentatively scheduled April 19th to be the first meeting date for that group. If you know of any person or if you have anyone in mind who you think would be very important for that work group, we in fact think that for the next MTP cycle, their role is going to be extremely important in setting our framework. How do we move about? Because if we're planning for 2050, it is really important that we have a significant amount of knowledge, not only of technology side of things, but also people who know Waco inside out to serve on that group. And so if you have anybody on your mind, please drop their address or their email or phone number to me so that we can convene that. But April 19th is tentatively the first date that they will meet, and then you will start hearing from them along with Bike and Pet Work Group.
All right, anything else on our work groups? No questions? Okay, well then we'll move on to our MPO monthly report.
So the most important part is that we have started revising our travel demand model for 2050, which will go as one of the inputs into our 2050 MTP. That is going to be on schedule. By April, we will have the projections and forecasts completed, April of next year. And that value of, just to give a little bit of background, those forecast numbers also end up playing a major role in each of your comprehensive planning process for every city. And along with, we just had a conversation with the consultants who are going to be doing the thoroughfare plan for City of Waco, and they will be using quite a bit of those forecasts. So these TDMs sort of end up serving a lot of background data related purpose for most of the projects across the area. So we are very much on schedule to complete that by April, and that would be useful. We have started the process for the 2050 MTP internally. And our expectation, I do want to just put it on your radar, because typically we take 1 year to complete our MTP. This time we decided that we really needed to, given all technological changes that have happened and also how we need to be responding for future of growth in Waco area, we needed to start the process much earlier. So internally in our staff meetings and stuff, we have already started having that discussion. We will also start discussing about our approach to how do we want to approach the next MTP. And hopefully we will have some directions that we can bring and present to you sometime by the middle of next year. And at that point in time, I'm also going to request the policy board to create a work group which will guide the rest of the MTP process for the next year and a half. And so that's sort of how we are preparing. We have started the preparation work behind the scene for that. Just a quick reminder that there will be no meeting scheduled for December. And while I say that, I also want to put you on alert that our January meeting is going to be quite lengthy and long. And so please adjust your schedule accordingly. A few announcements that I have. This one, if you have not submitted it this year, this is going to be a recurring theme. My understanding is that no application has been received at the district from Waco area for the highway safety improvement program. Oh, there is. Okay, thank you. Yes, I did not have the accurate data.
Well, I was this morning.
Okay. And so the deadline is still tomorrow, so we have one more day if there is any. Another very important part is the transportation alternative call for proposal opens on December 2nd. You all should have received a webinar information on, there are at least 2 virtual meetings that are scheduled before December 2nd. If you haven't, please let us know so that you can direct your staff to attend the webinar to make sure that, I know that the city of Waco has already finalized the list of projects for that. And if I understand correctly, city of Woodway is also in the process of looking into that. And so December 2nd is when it opens up. And so there are 2 webinars. Please make sure that the information goes out to the people who are going to be writing it. We had the public meeting for SPUR 298 yesterday that was well attended, and if I was there only for part of it. So Clayton, I'm not sure if there is anything new that came out at that meeting that the board needs to know.
No, sir. I just want to say thank you for taking our comments into consideration. I mean, I very much appreciated how well you all listened to what Waco had for feedback for that project.
The virtual presentation is still there, available, anybody who wants to see it. And we decided that we, actually Daniela took all of these photos during that I-35 ribbon cutting, which I knew everybody was very excited to be there. And so we had some photos, we just put a couple of slides for there for your viewing pleasure. And here are a few more.
All right. Any questions on the monthly report? All right, like Mukesh said, our next MPO policy board meeting is Thursday, January 19th at 2 o'clock. We hope that the projected length won't discourage you. So the MPO staff has advised me that they're gonna be just kind of an informal BYOB policy, maybe make it a little more palatable. So feel free, just as you feel better. Kidding, of course. But we've got some. And some of you may have a long-standing policy you've already been adopted. But we do have any call for future agenda items at that meeting or at any future items. I'd ask the staff if we can include an action item on our already approved strategic planning recommendations that we take on kind of one by one. We can bring before at least one for the board next time.
Yeah, so if I can add, so if you recall, in the strategic planning work group recommendations, there's the most important items were part of the regional identity that we have to take on first. And the recommendation numbers 3 and 4 actually need to occur first before we get to number 2. For instance, number 2 was regarding a name change. Number 3 was redesignation so that the policy board is designated to be the MPO rather than City of Waco. And also the responsibility of evaluation and firing of the MPO director to reside with the policy board rather than City of Waco's responsibility. So those are the two items which, based on that, when we were looking at the recommendations, which probably need to be brought up first. And the way it is going to work out is, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page related to that. So policy board does not redesignate itself, so the way it works is that we can bring up a resolution in which the policy board will request TxDOT, acting on behalf of the governor of the state, to redesignate the Waco MPO to be with the policy board, and maintaining the fiscal agent to be the City of Waco. And then once they grant or deny the request, if they grant the request, that would be the time policy board will then request an amendment to the current planning agreement with the required change in the language. And so we will bring up exactly the way it's going to look like. And the question I would have for all of you is that, would you prefer to have first reading before you take action? Or, because I know in our bylaws, we do not have anything related to reading of the resolution. So we typically bring up the resolution and policy board either acts on it or decides to table it for any further discussion.
Sounds like we have an action packed agenda item. And in fact, one of the agents in which condition targets.
Keep them around.
That's vice chairmanship.
Yeah.
Yeah.